Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1546A and today's date is April 16th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Phase 1 to Destroy the Dollar Might Have Been Launched Today. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now we need to understand something very important here. The economy was and still is dead in the water. It has not improved since 2008, and it's been declining ever since we went into fiat money, currency. And in the beginning stages of a fiat system, it seems like it's really great because you have incredible inflation. And people think, wow, look at my home. It just went up in price. It's amazing. Look, my salary doubled. And people really do feel good. And then they introduce credit. And they open it up to the mass public, which allows people to spend a lot more than they really have and puts people into debt. Well, we're on the back end right now. We're on the downside of when the system collapses. And the indicators that we are looking at, the indicators that we are following, well, they're all flashing red. And many of the indicators already show us and are reporting to us that we are either in a recession or we're headed towards a major collapse scenario. And when we look at like real estate or commercial real estate or retail or any of the manipulated numbers, we can see that, yeah, things aren't as good as they are broadcasting. If we look at commercial real estate, for instance, commercial real estate loans at banks in the U.S., they have reached a record $4.3 trillion. Now, this amount is now 11% higher than it had been during the crazy peak of the prior commercial real estate bubble before it imploded during the financial crisis. Now, in CRE, leverage is everything. Banks, particularly small regional banks that specialize in it, are on the hook. The Fed governors have pointed at the CRE as one of the places where elevated prices threaten financial stability because of leverage and the connection to the banks. Now, CRE loans were in part responsible for the near collapse of the financial system during the financial crisis. After CRE prices, the value of the collateral for those loans turned down. Commercial real estate prices collapsed nearly 40% during the financial crisis. Now, this is according to Green Street Commercial Property Price Index, the CPPI. Prices more than doubled from the low in May of 2009 and peaked in September of 2017 when the index was around 27% above the crazy peak of the prior bubble. But since September 2017, the index has dropped by 1.7%. Including a 1% drop in March from February. It is now down 2.1% from March last year and back where it had been in May 2016. Now, we've seen this before, where the commercial property price index was shooting up, and then it leveled off, started to decline, and then it pretty much imploded. If we go back to September of 2007, the index hit 100. And then it went south, all the way down to 61.2 by May of 2009. May of 2016, we are now at about 125. And it's starting to fall. And it looks like we're following the same exact path as we've done once before during the financial crisis. And this is not going to turn out very well. Now, when we look at this, and we look at the different types of real estate, we can see that things really don't look good for lodging. Because during the financial crisis, the Airbnb, it took a big dive and it has never recovered. Offices, the index dropped a steep 2% in March from February and is now down 1% from March a year ago. Retail, well, this is where the biggest issues are. The sector can be split into two categories, strip malls and malls. The sub-index for strip malls dropped 5% in March compared to March last year. It peaked at the end of 2016 and has since dropped by 8%. The sub-index for malls dropped 14% over the past 12 months after plunging 5% in just 1 month. Now, these price declines in the retail sector are starting to coalesce into a serious move, and it's just the beginning. The mall sector will provide ample pain to lenders and holders of commercial mortgage-backed securities as this washes out over the next few years. So this is another indicator. Now, at GM, we can see that sales aren't going as well as they thought. The Cruze, the Chevy Cruze compact car, is not selling very well, and we understand that this is going to lead to layoffs. Now, the GM plant in Lordstown, Ohio, which only builds the Chevy Cruze compact car, already went through layoffs in 2017 when it trimmed its 3 shifts to 2 shifts and cut about 1,200 workers due to what GM said at the time was a change in consumer preference from cars to SUVs, crossovers, and pickups. These cuts brought the workforce at the Lordstown plant down to about 3,000 employees, 2,700 hourly and 300 salaried. Now the number is going to get cut in half. Approximately 1,500 positions will be eliminated. And we have to remember the delinquency rate in subprime auto loans have soared to the worst level since 1996. The first 3 specialized small lenders have already collapsed. Think about what is happening right now. Everything is starting to reverse. Remember, the central banks, they build the bubbles up, they keep blowing them up until they can't do it anymore. And we're at that point where they've blown these bubbles up, and now everything is starting to deflate, and what happens is these bubbles will lose air very, very quickly. And this is what we're seeing happen right now. Because when we look at all the economic indicators, we look at all different sectors, we can see that things are rapidly falling apart, and everyone's trying to explain why all this is happening. Just like they tried to explain why retail wasn't doing as well. And I know there's a report out there saying that retail is back. Retail is not back. It's still declining. It's not improving. And this is what they do to make you think that everything is fantastic. And you'll see as we move towards the holiday season of this year, it's going to be even worse. That's if the whole system doesn't come down. And what we're seeing is a huge push to bring the entire system down. Now, why do we need to bring down the system? Well, we've explained this many, many times. This is a central banking system. This is not a system for the people. It is a system for the central bankers, the deep state. And this funds their operations around the world. It makes them very profitable. They steal hard assets by trading in paper currency. And they've been doing this for a very long time, and it allows them to maintain control over the world. That's the name of the game, control. We see Trump and patriots, and I need to clear this up. Trump is not the only one doing this. He's the mouthpiece of all the different patriots that are trying to remove the central banking system, remove the deep state, and bring America back to the way it was. Well, it can't go right back to the way it was because things have rapidly changed and the central bankers have basically ruined our manufacturing base. So to bring all that back is going to take some time, just like it took a lot of time to ship it all off over to the East. To bring it all back, you can't do that in a couple of months. You can't do that in a year. It will take a very, very long time. But what can be done is we can start from ground zero. We can remove the central bank. We can start to bring back companies, manufacturing, and let this happen over time. And the only way to do any of this and to basically bring America back to the way it was and to remove those factions that have destroyed the country is to destroy their system. And we can see there's a battle going on right now because you need to gain the narrative of the story, because whoever has the narrative, whoever wins, they're the ones who explain to the American public, to the global population, of what actually happened. Just like the deep state that was in power during 1971, they had control of the narrative. Behind the scenes, they were taking us off the gold standard in 1971, bringing us onto the petrodollar system. They controlled the narrative and they told the world that we were running out of oil. We can't find any oil. This is why you're going to see gas lines. This is why you won't be able to get the fuel for your car. This is why there'll be high unemployment, because they controlled the narrative. The same thing is happening right now. there's a battle going on between the central bank and the patriots on who's going to control the narrative. And there's different covert operations in the background that are happening right now. I mean, Trump came out today and he said China and Russia, they are manipulating currencies. They're currency manipulator, even though there was a report coming out of the Treasury saying that no one is manipulating the currency. And it looks like what he's trying to do is he's trying to push the currency war forward to bring down the system. Because what's very interesting in what he said was the following. Now, he accuses China and Russia of playing the currency devaluation game at the time of rising interest rates, which Trump slammed as not acceptable. He said that as China and Russia devalue their currency, the United States has to raise their rates. Now, again, are Russia and China devaluing their currencies? Actually, not really. China, yes. Russia, not really. And I think this is a sign where he wants the central bank to raise the rates to destroy the economy. And I think this is the beginning phase of trying to destroy the dollar. Because again, if he can get the central bank to continually raise the rates and say they are raising the rates because he put it out there that the United States is raising the rates, he can bring down the system because we've seen it happen before. Now remember, he's already implemented tariffs. He's already talked about reciprocal taxes. Everything that he's doing right now is to destroy the central banking system and to line up the entire economic structure for the transition. So he's doing two things at once. And it's not just him. I just use him as saying that he's the focal point. But there are many individuals working with him. And the deep state, again, they don't want their system to be brought down by Trump. They don't want him to gain the narrative. They don't want him to say, oh, it was the central banker's fault. They were raising interest rates. And he can go back to 2006, 2007, 2008 and use that as an example, saying, listen, they raised the rates during that period of time. And when they reached a certain point and they saw the economy breaking down, they started to lower the rates. He can do the same thing once again. And I think this is the beginning phase of trying to destroy the dollar and push this currency war forward. Now remember, we already see signs that the United States is getting prepared and ready to join the One Belt, One Road, because we understand right now that they have the manufacturing, the United States does not. We need to have trade. The old trade system will not work. The globalist system will not work. It's being dismantled right now. Once the dollar goes away, well, it's game over, and we need to switch the game around and create different type of trade with other countries. This is why Trump is out there doing bilateral trades with many countries, and he's realizing that, yes, now is the time we need to go and most likely interconnect with the Belt and Road. And it looks like he's following that step right now while destroying the economy. There's a lot of things happening all at once, and they all intertwine. Remember, the petrodollar right now is the Middle East. The Middle East controls the petrodollar. It was set up this way back in 1971. And once these countries decide to govern themselves, they'll make decisions of how they're going to sell their oil. Most of them, just like they wanted to do going back when we invaded Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, they all wanted to use either gold, their own currency, the euro, or another currency. And this is why the United States went in there and said, no, you're not going to do that. We need regime change to make sure that everyone's using the dollar. Because if they did that at that time, countries would not have to keep the dollar in reserves. They would take on other currencies, and the dollar, that would flow back to the United States, and we would see inflation, then hyperinflation, and the whole thing would have come down. This is why they went out and they tried to control the Middle East once again. Now we can see that all this is coming to an end very, very quickly. And once the Middle East makes decisions on not using the dollar, well, guess what? These dollars need to go someplace. If they're not in reserves in different countries to buy the oil, they're coming back to the United States. Everything is moving from the west to the east right now. This is why China has been purchasing gold. Russia's been purchasing gold. Russia has taken control of the private Western Central Bank. We have the Petro Yuan. We have all the trading systems, the gold exchange, everything has been duplicated out in China. And this is why the One Belt, One Road is very important, because these are all the routes going to all the emerging markets, going into Europe, going into Russia, and they'll be trading outside of the dollar. And eventually, the dollar will not be used anymore. And we can see that all of this, when you take all of this and you combine it together, you can see this is a disaster scenario for the United States. And this is why we need to transition into something else. We need bilateral trade agreements. We need to join the Belt and Road. We need to transition out of the globalist central banking system into a brand new system. And that's what we are doing right now. So we are going to be going through this transition. It's going to be very rough. A lot of people aren't going to be understanding what's going on, just like a lot of people didn't understand what was happening in 1971. Again, there was no internet, very difficult to get the information out there. People really thought there was a gas shortage. People really thought there was people speculating in gold, and this is why we had to come off the gold standard. Today, people have a lot more information. Today, you can go on the internet. You can do research. You can look at all the information. You can go back in time. You can say, wait a minute, they told us it was gold speculators. They said this was going to be temporary. They said we had a gas shortage. But 45, 48 years later, there's no gas shortage. Everything's fine now. All of a sudden, they found all this oil. No, it was a lie, because we're going from one system to another. The same thing is happening right now. Once we go through this transition, once we see what is happening, we will go back in time. We'll see what the central bankers actually did. Most likely there'll be an audit. People will be shocked, horrified, and what has been done to this country. What happened in 1913? What has happened since then? But we are going to be going through this transition. We're going to see a lot of things freeze up. We're going to see inflation. We're going to see a new system being born. But again, going through this transition, it's going to be quite bumpy for a lot of people. And this is why you need to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.